Yeah, good morning, everyone. So last session we learned few events, how we can work with various events. One example I showed you. The example we learned is related to EMI calculator. You people tried that example. So anyone tried anything others than that? You can try BMI calculator. You know BMI calculator, body mass calculator, right? Actually, BMI calculator, you can try same concepts, different formula will be there. You search for the formula for BMI, you implement. Actually, BMI calculator usually have formulas. BMI formula will be similar to this actually. If you can try that EMI calculator, the same concept here. It's still compiling. Let's check. It's compiling. Usually this BMI calculators generally a BMI calculator looks like this. This is BMI calculator. You see in this BMI calculator, user can select gender, male or female. And user can enter age, some age. And user will enter height according to age. User will enter the weight. Actually, if BMI calculator will tell according to age and height, is the weight normal, is the weight overweight and all that. For that, it uses a formula behind it. And you see here, I'm entering weight as suppose 74 and calculate for that age and that height. It is a little overweight. It shows status like this. And it puts the pointer here. Actually, this is the BMI value. For this, we have a formula. BMI formula will be there. You have to search that. And in that formula, you have to implement these values. Age, height, and weight. Based on that, it will calculate the BMI. If it is suppose in 65, calculate, then it will be like this, normal. Now, This number you can achieve, that's okay. But how you will design this, which can be changing like that. Actually, for that, we can use Bootstrap. By using Bootstrap, we can design it and we can even control that. Dynamically, we can control by using Bootstrap. This is done by using Bootstrap. We handle that by using Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is used for managing this. Let's see, for example, how to achieve that, actually, what the result they have given. So this is the EMI calculator we designed. I will show you one simple design interface actually. Let's create one component. I will just show you the design. Functionality you have to create. You need to implement the functionality. Just I will add a component. So ng generate component BMI skip test. So we are creating a BMI component. Let's keep this in the startup BMI. And in index also, we will make some changes. So app BMI. And here, these are the changes here. And you can see this BMI is currently working fine. Let's go to the BMI HTML. In order to design like that, I will use a class container fluid. Actually, I will just show you BMI status. Usually it is generally it is an div. In Bootstrap, we have a option called progress. Usually progress have a progress bar. So we will have a progress bar. This progress bar, I am giving, this is actually value like. So this is less than, or say, yeah, normal weight. This is like less than how much, 52. So, and this is low weight BMI, something like this. Low weight. Okay. And another one, this progress bar will have some color BG dark. That is the progress bar we have. Another progress bar we will use. This progress bar we will give BG primary. So primary, and this is normal weight. So that means here I said some 53 to 72. This is a normal weight, like this I added. And here I add one more. This is BG dark. This is greater than 72, 73, and here say overweight. Just values are there. And actually, you can see the progress bar. It looks like this. That is the progress bar. Generally, we need to adjust the width actually. That means for this progress bar style, width is 400 pixels. And because out of 1200, we have to share. So this is also 400. This is also 400. And you can see that looks like this. That is the BMI status bar, which is designed by using Bootstrap. And actually, what happens now? So this, under this progress bar, I will use some padding too. Little some gap padding is not here. It is progress only. Okay. Now here we are adding one more below this progress bar. This is progress bar. Below the progress bar, I am adding another div. And for this class, I am giving as this is BI triangle fill is there. Let's check. Triangle fill is there. That is the triangle fill. And actually that will be changing according to BMI value. That's position of the triangle will be changing according to the value. This how to control its position we already know. We learned styles binding, we learned class binding. By using that, we can apply the value for that. For example, suppose here we are adding a TS file. Here I will put a property like public. This is a BMI status. BMI status is a any type object, or it is an object type because it's a style object. Style object contains property. This contains a property margin. So we have a property. What is it? Margin left I will give. And it is what type of property? String. Only margin left we are giving. Then what is the value for that? So we are adding margin left. Margin left initially it is having how many pixels? Some it is a string type. It is having 0 pixel. Margin left it is 0 pixel. This BMI status we will bind with this triangle. That means how do you bind? By using ng style. And what is it? BMI status. We have to get the BMI status and use it. BMI status and apply. Now BMI status will be changing. Actually BMI status is here. Later when we calculate BMI, we will identify that the weight is between 50 between 70 to 80. Then let's see, 70 to 80 means it will be here on the right side. Greater than 70. Greater than 70 means it will be here. That means what we will do is here we will put pixel as some 850 pixels. 850 pixel margin left, it will come there. It has to get there and display. Actually it is huge like this. It's the original size actually. This is 100%. That is the original size. 850 means it will be there. Suppose their weight is between 53 to 42. Then I will give it as 650. Then 650. Then it will keep that here. So I will keep as 550. It will be here. So how you are handling that? Because actually what is the point is 400, 400, 400. We distributed among 12. That means if it is between 52, 0 to 52, then it is between 0 to 400. Am I right? If it is 53 to 72, between 400 to 800. If it is more than that, that means it is more than 800, 800 to 1200. That's the calculation how you give the margins. Based on BMI calculation, how much weight it is, we will adjust that slider. Dynamically, it can change depending on the value that you are defining. Actually, this value we are manually applying, but you know that you can get it from any location. That means you can get it from a text box. So and submit the value. But for that, what you have to do, you have to try design this interface. BMI calculator interface. You need to create this interface. User will enter the age, user will enter the height, user will enter the weight. So based on that, calculate the BMI status should display. Down arrow, up arrow, any word you can keep there, anything you can keep there. So that is basically how we create. Now this is your task. You should try this. That means you must able to design a BMI calculator. Take 3 values and calculate the BMI using BMI formula. And you need to show the status. Here status must be like this. And it should show the status in this diagram also. By using a progress bar, you can achieve that. I kept the titles here. You can keep above. Yesterday, EMI calculator, we divided columns 3. We can put there also. So it's depending on your requirement. I will just give you this idea, you try. So BMI dot component dot what TS. So this is BMI component TS file. And in this we have only one style object and BMI dot component dot HTML. And this is HTML. These are all the points for events. So we have seen different events of JavaScript. Remember, nobody in the world of training of Angular will teach you about events. In any Angular concept tutorials anywhere, nobody tells you about events because that is all JavaScript only. So here just only one difference they will tell: how to pass event arguments and what are the event style definition. All JavaScript events only here we have to use. We have to implement all JavaScript examples only here. I just given more examples to you, but nobody in Angular tutorials anywhere talks about events. Just they will talk about one point: how JavaScript writes event, how Angular writes events. That's it. All events, you don't need examples. You need to practice all these events with your JavaScript example. In your JavaScript, you will learn for every event different examples. Those you have to implement here. Anyhow, I given mouse events, keyboard events, button events, status events, some more events examples I will upload into Classroom. By seeing them, you try. Right? We can't discuss all JavaScript things again here. Okay. So these are all related to which concept events. But here, what is new you need to learn is actually the new concept you need to understand and very major for interviews is custom events. Another very important point is custom events. This is the major concept you need to learn here. Custom events, that is the key point. Actually, click, change, blur, focus, all these are general built-in events which are available with JavaScript. Custom events means we can create our own events. Just like click, we can create our own events. That's what actually custom event. Remember, I told you one topic: content projection and custom events. These are all interview based topics, very important. Almost out of 100 Angular interviews you attend, 100 interviews will ask questions on content projection and custom events. Means every interview will have a question on these two topics. There is no exception, because in Angular, these are the major concepts that we use for real-time development. And you must be very strong in these areas. That's the reason. So custom event means actually you can create a custom component. You can create a custom component. Custom component means your own component. Already, all these days we are doing that. We are creating our own components. What is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of creating a component? Suppose I want a Netflix register. Instead of directly registering or designing register, why I created a component for it? So instead of directly designing in a page, why I created like a component? So that we can reuse. We can reuse the component. So what is the purpose of custom components? Custom components are designed for reusability. Custom components are designed for reusability. They are designed for reusability so that you can reuse them. Now the question is here, when you are reusing, do I need to reuse in the same way every time? Do I need to reuse in the same way every time? Not every time. So sometimes the functionality will change according to requirement. Component is same, but its usage will be changing. Its behavior will be changing. Some components will have same behavior, but some components will change behavior. For example, you saw Netflix register, same behavior I need everywhere. One register button and another one email. And same functionality I want everywhere. It should verify the email. That is the functionality also. So you have your own components. You design those components for reusability, but every time the components are not used in the same way. Sometimes we need to change the component according to requirements. For example, suppose what we are doing is we are designing a component. We are designing a component like a grid. Grid is a component. Grid is nothing but it is a table so that can display data. A table that can display data, and not only that, it allows filter, it allows sorting, it allows any kind of operations like edit, delete, all these things it will allow. Now what happens is, this is that grid component design. Now we have data. Suppose we have employee data. In employee data, we have employee name, we have employee designation, we have salary. So like this, we have some details. We have some products data. In products data, we have product name, we have product price, we have product stock, we have product rating, like this. Now, is the table same for every data? That means, will you design one grid for products, another grid for employee, another grid for students? For every data, you will design a grid. Then what is use of component? That means now this component must be in such a way that it should change its behavior and functionality according to the data that is coming. If you are sending employee data, it should display how many columns? 3. And it should filter by name, filter by designation, filter by salary. And if you are sending product details into the same component, that component changes. From 3 columns, it will change to how many columns? 4. And it will, this time it will work filter by name, filter by price, filter by stock. So component is only one, but it changes its behavior. That means functionality must change according to situation. In that case, We create our own components. Custom components are designed for reusability. Actually, you can reuse in the same way how it is designed, or you can customize according to requirements. You can use in the same way how it is designed, or you can customize according to the requirements. Now, very important is, if you want a component, to customize according to requirements, then you have to configure with the custom events. You have to configure with custom events. That is the necessity of custom events. We don't need custom events. We don't need custom events every time. We don't need custom events every time. Custom events are required only when a component is designed to handle different types of functionality, when it goes into different types of environment. When the environment is changing, the component's behavior and its functionality will be changing. For that, we need custom event. That means our own events are required. We have to define our own events. Here, as I showed you the example, what is the challenge here is, suppose the key challenge here, I will tell you. Suppose what we are doing. First thing is, here, one of the key point here is, suppose we have index page, index component. In this index component, you have data. We have data of some employee. In that index component, we have data of employee. Now, for example, now what we have to do is, here, actually, we have a component created. The component created is what? This is a grid component created. Grid component is created. This grid component, this is index component. In this index component, we are bringing this grid component. We are bringing this grid component here. Now that means the grid component comes here. So we have index. In that index component, we are using a grid component. We are using that grid component here. Now, which one is parent? Index. Which one is child? Grid. We need to transport data from parent to child. This is a challenge. We need to transport the data from one component to another. This is the first question asked in Angular interviews. In Angular interviews, they ask how to transport data from one component to another. And this is not easy. This is not the simple task. So transporting data from one component to another is a common question in every Angular interview. Here the challenge is transporting data from parent to child is simple. Little new concept it is, but it is simple because you already learned in JavaScript higher order components. So that means outer functions, inner functions. Any variable declared in an outer function, is it accessible to inner function? It is accessible because the variables that you declare by using var, let, and const. So if you declare var or let or const, they are block scope. Var is function scope, let and const are block scope. They are accessible in the block where you declared, and they are accessible to inner blocks. This is a easy concept. we can easily access the data of parent to child. That is, but in Angular, it is a new concept. It's a challenging one. Challenging one is sending data from child to parent. That means transporting data from here to here, it's okay. But transporting data from child component to parent, this is very big challenge. Why? Because in order to send data from parent to child, it's like simply you drop, it will go, right? But sending, you have to throw. You have to throw the data. That means you have to eject the data and it should catch the data, parent. It's a very big concept. That means how you throw the data outside the orbit. That is a challenging one. Orbit of whom? Orbit of grid. That means a satellite easily comes into the Earth atmosphere. Going out of the atmosphere requires a lot of pressure. You need a rocket. Am I right? You need a rocket to send anything outside the atmosphere of Earth. And you don't need much rocket or fuel to come from outer orbit to inner. The same thing here. So you need to fill up a rocket and eject it, fire it. It will go and send it. You have to fire a rocket. That rocket is event emitter. We learned event na? Event emitter. Emitter. The name itself tells. Events are derived from which class? Event emitter. So its name itself tells it is for emitting values. It is for emitting the values. It emits the value and you have to catch that. This is the concept you have to implement while designing your own components. Earlier, we created a Netflix-like screen where we accessed one component in another. There, we don't need to transport any data. So simply we access it. But now we need to transport data to one component to another. Let's see how. So in this custom events, what are the challenges? So what are the challenges? Challenges number one is accessing a component in another. So that means parent and child. This is simple. That's not a big one. We know it. That means how to access a component in another component. We already know now. Generally, how we do. Suppose we have parent component. Am I right? In the parent component, we want to access the child. In order to access child, we use here na app child. We have to access that here. In a parent, you can access child component, which we were doing already. Already we were doing this, accessing a parent and a child inside parent. Second important is transporting data from parent to child. And third one is so transporting data from child to parent. These are all the phases. These are all the phases of how we can manage. So transporting data from parent to child and transporting data from child to parent. For this, actually, to transport data from parent to child and child to parent, what are required? I will show you that. We will see that now. First, let's achieve the first point. Then we will achieve the second and third points, right? Let's achieve the first one. We will do one thing to understand this example. We will I will add a component here and ng generate component parent. I'm adding directly parent component. Skip this. Okay, let's add one more component called child. So we have parent and child components. Let's keep the parent component in the startup. In the startup, I will keep the parent component. So in index, we will set it to app parent. So parent component is in the startup. Okay. So parent component is working here. Let's go to the parent design. In this parent design, I'm adding a container. And here we will put a heading also. This is parent container. And for this, we will put BG dark text white. Okay, this is the parent container we are having. That's the parent container. Style height for this as 400 pixel. That is the parent container. And we will keep margin 3. This is the parent container we are having. Okay. Now let's go and design the child container. So child component we are creating here. Another div class as container. And here we keep a heading as child. So this is parent container. This is child container. So container. Okay. And here we will keep a different color, BG light and text dark. Okay. And here also we will keep height, style height, and height is some 200 pixel. This is a parent and child container is there. Now I want to access the child container in parent. We have to use app what? Child. Inside the parent container, we are accessing child. That means it will get the attention. Now we have the parent and child hierarchy. Now what I want to do is I want to send some data from parent to child. First step, we are achieving this one. This is finished. Accessing a component in another component. That is done. First step is finished. So we can access a component in another component. So we done that. Now in the parent component, let's go to the design. Here we will put a button, send message to child. I kept a button here, send message to child. Let's keep padding as 4. So send message to child. This is the button. When user clicks this button, a message should go to child container. Remember, both are two different classes. Now, technically, you have to understand that you are accessing a class in another class. Component is a class, right? Technically, you are accessing a class inside another class, parent class and child class. And you need to send data from parent to the child. First important, if you are trying to send data from the parent to child, from parent to child, there must be someone in child to collect it. That means you are transporting data from parent to child. There must be someone in the child to collect it. That means you need to keep someone to collect that information. So child component needs somebody to store the data coming from parent. Generally in a class where data is stored, in a class where data is stored in properties. Class contains properties, methods, accessors, and constructor. What is the purpose of a property? Storing the data. So you need a property in child container to store the data that is coming from parent. So here we will go to child component. In child component TS file, we will declare a property. Public, and the property name I will give as MSG from message from home parent. Child component is expecting a message from parent, which is what type? String, and it is an empty string. As of now, it is empty. So there is a property message from parent, which is expecting a string. When they send that message, where to display this message? This message must be displayed in the same child component below the heading. Below the heading, I will put a paragraph. Here we will put the message. What is the message? Message from what? Parent. This is the value. That message from parent we will keep here. Message from parent. So one property is there, and that property is nothing but ready for collecting the data from the parent. But here the major problem is the property that you defined, in this class is not accessible outside the class. Remember, this property we need to access in parent. Now we will try here. Let's go to the parent component. Now child component have a property. How to access the properties? Properties are accessed with square brace. Property binding na? Square brace. What is the property name? We created a custom property now. What is our property name? Message, MSG, message from what? Parent. And into that, we need to pass some message. Na? We need to pass some string message that we will send from the parent component. But see here, it is saying that message from parent cannot bind to message from parent. It is not a known property of AppChild. It says that it is not a property of AppChild, but actually it is a property of AppChild. So any property that you defined in a component and which is trying to accept value from parent, which is not expecting value internally, it is expecting an input value coming from where? Parent component. In that case, we have to mark this with @input. @input directive. So this @input directive is a member of Angular core library. We have to write input. We have to import. Now, once you mark it as input, it allows to input from parent. It allows to access from parent. Why it is input, marked as input? Because it is designed for taking input. This property is designed for taking value. And input value comes from where? Input value comes from parent. Now you can see that here. Let's try this. You see now, I'm using in the square brace, message from parent is the property now. Earlier it is not. That means if any property you declared in a child component, which is expecting value from its parent, then it should be marked as what? input. Now you can see we defined it. Now it is expecting a string that we will send on button click of parent. Now we will do one thing. So go to parent. In the parent TS, we will write as a public. First, we will create public. We will create MSG. What type? String type. It's an empty. We will write a method public. Method is send click. On send click, this dot MSG. MSG, it should send a message saying that hello. Hello from where? Parent. That is the message. That means we will write that send click and attach to the parent button. So button click. On button click, what we have to do? Send click and send click. And we need to attach the value coming from where? Message. Am I right? That is the message MSG. That means now what you are doing is MSG is a value of parent component. The value of parent component you are sending into child. Child component is collecting that value and storing in a property, and it is using. And for that, we created a property which is marked as what? Input. And initially this message is empty. That message will be updated when user clicks the button. From parent, you can click that button and you can see now initially the message is empty. And I click this button, send message to child. It says hello from parent. Hello from parent, it is coming and displaying inside this parent container. That means we are transporting data from parent to child. So this is the message from parent container sent to child. That is transporting data from parent to child. So here by default it is empty. And when I click on send message to child, it will send that message here. So this is the second stage that you have implemented. This is very important. So the concept here is syntax. In the syntax, first here syntax for this is for transporting data from parent to child. What is the syntax for that? First thing is create a property in child component that can accept input from parent. How to create a property? We have to first import. We have to import. Which one to import? Input from where? Angular core. Angular core library we have to import. And we need to mark @ what? Input. We have public. So this is message from parent. It is a string type and it is initially empty. That is how we need to define. So here, what is the point here is this is the first thing actually. So why we have to mark as input? Because if you don't mark as input, this property can accept input only from current component. So a property usually can accept input only from current component. If you are designing a property to accept input from any another component, then it should be marked as input, right? So here a simple note is @ input is a marker or people call as directive. It is a marker or directive. So which is used to mark any property that is expecting data from another component. Data from another means whom? Parent. Data from parent component. Otherwise, it is not possible. This is the first thing. So you have to configure the properties with input. What is the second step now? We need to send data into that property. So how we send data into the property? The second step, send data into the component using which technique? Send data into the component by using which technique? By using property binding technique. It is property binding technique now. Property binding technique means what? We have to write like this. What is it? App child. In that property is message from where the parent. Message from parent is equal to some string. You can directly put some message, or you can send message from any variable or any property of your parent class. So that is how we can manage. This is sending data into component using property. So you have the approach. Message from parent and how we can access the message from parent and display. Right. So sending data into the component using which technique? Property binding. Right. So it will show message as a unknown property. The property is not known if you don't mark as input. Okay, second concept also achieved. First concept, calling a component in another component, that is simple, nothing to do. Just mention the component selector. Second, transporting data from parent to child. For that, first you have to keep a property in a child, marked as what? Input. And from parent, you send the value into it. That is one. Now, the major one, this is we need to transport data from child to parent. Let's see how it can be done. How to transport data from parent to child. And as I told you here, now you may think in a reverse way. It cannot happen. You may think like a reverse way. Reverse way means what? You may think you will put a input property in parent. Am I right? On button click, you will send from child to parent. Not possible. That is not possible. So that means that is not possible to do. Because here, how you send from child to parent? Where you will send from child to parent? From parent to child, where to send it is known now clearly. How you will send to parent? Because it is inside the parent. So this is one important point. Actually, in many programming languages, you might have learned parent class, child class, how to access the members of child class in parent class. Even in JavaScript also, we call this mechanism as closure. Function closures will be there. Function closure means an outer function, inner function will be there. Inner function can send data to outer function. That for that we need a closure technique to handle. Now here how it works, let's see. Now as I already told you, from parent to child is easy because you are just dropping the data. You are just dropping the data, but child to parent requires more pressure, more force. You have to, that means you have to kick out of the scope, then the parent can catch. Otherwise it cannot. So let's do one thing now. We will design a button in the child component. Here we will put a button in the child component and we'll say message to parent. This is a option here. This is message to parent. Here also I will put padding for a okay. Message to parent. Now when I click this button, some from send message to child it is coming. When I click this button, so then it should send data to its parent. Then how do we do is, so how to send? We have to write first when to send on click. Am I right? On click. That means when you click this button, this is send click. Am I right? So on send click, you are using some send click. So on send click, what we have to do is on this method, we need to send data from child to parent. It's not easy because the force will not allow. That means it is tightly coupled. It will not allow. Then what we do is we use a concept called actually event emitter. We use event emitter. By using this event emitter, we emit any value. By using event emitter, we emit any value. Now what event emitter can do is it can forcibly throw your value outside. Ordinary methods cannot do that. This is a special type of method designed in Angular to kick your values outside the scope. That means send them outside the scope. That means outside the zone of child. When it goes outside, emits outside, then the parent can catch and use it. This is the concept how to handle that. Let's see first. First, what we have to do is here, we need to create here. Let's go to child component. Here we need two things now. One is the one option is we need two things here. One is we need a event emitter. So we will import event emitter. Another one, to collect value, you need input. To send value, you need output. You need another directive output. Remember in Angular interviews, they don't directly ask the question. Several times they ask, what is purpose of input and output in Angular? Input and output directives in Angular. Actually, this topic is related to transporting data. They will ask how to transport data from parent to child, child to parent. What is the role of input and output? What is an event emitter? What are custom events? All related to one topic only. All related to the same topic. That means now you need two things. One is event emitter, another one is output. So what we are doing here is first, we are creating public. We are creating an custom event which can emit the value outside this scope. We have to create our own events. How to create own event? The event name. Generally, what are the default events? Click, change, blur. I will write an event name called child click. child click is an event. There is no child click event in JavaScript. They have only click. We created an event called child click. Now, what is that child click is an event type? How we will mention as an event type? By implementing it is of type what? Event emitter. It is of type event emitter. We learned generics na. We discussed about generics. Event emitter is a generic type. That means it can emit any type of value and it can change according to situation. That means I told you generic type means you tell string, it will work for string. You tell number, it will work for number. So that means it is generic type. Initially you mentioned for what type it should work. That means what type of value you are emitting. I am emitting what type of value? String. Then we need to allocate a memory for event emitter string type, so that in that memory the emitted value can be stored. What is new? New is memory allocation operator. So you are allocating memory for this custom event to store the data of that particular event. Any data from that event can be stored inside that location. We can keep that inside the location. This is event emitter. This is event emitter. Okay, but this is event name na? What is the event name? Child click. Let's see in the parent component, app is having one property. We can have event. How to bind events? Events properties are binded in square brace. Events are binded in parenthesis. Parenthesis event. What is the event name? Child click. It's not there. Child click is not there. Just like input, we already know that. So we need to mark this as, it is as what? Output. Properties which take value, they are marked as input, and the properties which will send output, they are marked as output. Collecting value is input, sending value is output. Now it is marked as output. Now see the parent. In the parent, we have that event. And you see it says that it is an event. That means Angular recognizes it as an event. This is an event. Now generally what event will do? Event will use a method. Event uses a method. Into the method, can we pass any data? Into the method, we can pass the data by using event arguments. Na? By using event argument, we can pass the data. We can pass the data. So it is expecting a method. So now parent should use a method. Parent should use a method. Into that parent method, it can emit the value. That means now parent, remember parent requires a method which can collect the data coming from this event. So let's go to parent. In parent, we will create a method. So method, what is it? Get message from home child. How to get the message? Using event argument. Na? Event argument is what type? String, because we sending a string. Na? If you don't know any type, you can put any type. You can send any type. It's not only string. You can send an object, array, anything you can send. I will show you another type also. Initially, get message from child and store that message. Na? So here, I will create another property, message from home child. It is what type? String. It is initially empty. And this dot message from child is equal to E. E is a string. Now we are applying that. That means now this parent component child click, it has to use which one? Get a message from child. Get message from child. This is the method. Into that we have to pass the event arguments. Event arguments are passed by using $event. Child click is a custom event and it is emitting this value. But remember, you just designed an event in child. You haven't mentioned when and what value to emit. You just mentioned an event. You haven't mentioned when and which value to emit. The value to emit is not still ready, right? You just created an empty event and you haven't mentioned what value to emit, when to emit. When to emit? When to emit? When user clicks this button, right? I will write a method public. What is it? So child button click. Am I right? So child button click. On child button click, what we have to do? We have to emit some message. We have to emit some message. What is that? Suppose this is message from parent, it is collecting. We will send some message. Who will send the message? Emitter, na? That means this dot, what is it? Child click. Child click is an event. Am I right? This event should emit a value, string type value. What is the value? We will say hello, hello from whom? Child. This we will emit there. And when this functionality should happen? When user clicks this button. Am I right? So on click of this button, it should call, what is it? Child button click. This function should fire up. Now what this function will do? It will trigger this event and it will emit a value in this one. That value is sent as event argument. Now what parent component is doing? Collecting that event argument and sending into which method? Get message. What this get message method will do? Collect it and store in message from child. This we will display in the parent component somewhere here. Suppose somewhere below the heading, I will put a paragraph. Here we have to define what is it? Message from what? Child. That's what it is. MSG is lowercase. Yeah. Message from child. It will get that and display. Now let's run this and see here. That means you click the button, it will send a message to child. And you click this button, it will send a message to parent. That means we are transporting data from child to parent. Parent to child, child to parent. That is the hierarchy it is using. So we are transporting data from one component to another. This is one component to another component in a nested hierarchy. There is one more challenge. If this component is closed and another component is coming, how you will send data? Currently, a component is present inside component. So we are sending the data. If this component closed and another component came, how you will send? For example, you are using login. When you are using login, you entered user ID, password. After entering user ID, password, you will click login. Still login screen will be there? No, login screen will not be there. If login is successful, login screen will go and welcome screen will come. In welcome screen, they will display the message who logged in. In login component, one user ID you entered, that user ID is displayed in welcome component. Is welcome component a child component of login? No, it is the next component of login. Transporting data from parent to child, child to parent is okay. But transporting to complete different component is very hard. For that, we need to implement state management. That's a big concept in web development. Every web technology have to use a concept called state management. By using state management techniques, we transport data from one phase to another, one request to another. But this is not that state management. This is transporting data from parent to child, child to parent. Here you don't need any state management. This is called context memory. Context memory means parent memory. Inside the parent memory, child. That means child can use the memory of parent, parent can use the memory of child. This is called context memory. This mechanism is context memory. That is possible by using this technique, right? This is usually handled by using the concept of input and output. Now, what is the syntax for that? That means next syntax. That is what? Transporting data from child to parent. What are the rules for this? First thing is you have to create a custom event. You have to create a custom event. How do we create a custom event? First, we have to import. One is output, another one is event emitter. From which location? Angular core. Angular core, we have to import this. After that, next what we have to do is you need to mark as what? Output. So, and you need to define public, and child click is an event. It is of what type? Event emitter type, and it is emitting a string. A new event emitter of what type? String, and the memory is allocated. That is the first stage. In the first stage, you need to create a custom event, and custom events are created by using the type event emitter. Next step, second step, what we have to do is you have to emit the value by using any event, any default event, any built-in event. You can call it as built-in event. By using any built-in event, that means what we have to do, we have to say public. This is on button click. On button click, what we have to do? On button click is a function. On button click, what we need to do? This dot, what is it? Child click dot what? Emit what? Message, or you can say as what? Value. You need to emit that value. On that click, you have to emit. Remember, you can emit any kind of value. Currently, I defined a string type. You can use an object type, array type, any type. So after that, after you emit, this must be binded, right? That means child component uses custom event to emit value. So it uses custom event to emit value. How it uses custom event? App child. It uses, what is it? Child click. Child click is equal to, what is it? Suppose we have option. What is get message from where? Child. Into that we have to pass what? Dollar event. This is the option. That means whatever the value you emitted, this value is sent as event argument. Now who have to collect this? That means parent component have to collect the event argument and use in its context, and have to use in its context. You have to use in its context. That is important. So here what we have to do now, parent component have to collect the event arguments and use in this context. That means we have to create a method. What is the method? Get a message from where? Child. We will collect E. What type? String type. And here we can store in some reference. That means some this dot message from child is equal to what? E. and you can display that anywhere here. Am I right? Message from child. This entire example I will give, but just I am giving the syntax steps, how the process happens. So this is the hierarchy that you have to manage, right? Creating the components, transporting data from parent to child, from child to parent. Remember, this is just a syntax example. Right now, we will take a real-time example for this. In real time, where we implement this, where we handle this, how we can handle the same with the real world example, right? I will explain this with one more example, one more time, because I know that many people are confused. Your faces will tell. Because obviously topic is complex. It's not, generally these topics are not discussed for freshers. We ignore this. But people have to handle interviews at large level. That's the reason we are discussing such complex topics also. Custom events for a fresher level, nobody tells. They will simply tell you about events, how to manage. But at experience level, these are mandatory questions. That's the reason, even if it is little hard, you need to learn it. Right? It's little confusion. It's okay, no problem. I will explain one more time with another example, with some more examples how to implement one more time. Then you will get a clarity on that. Okay. Now this example I will give here. In this, first you design child.component.ts. In child component TS, this is the code. And we have child.component.html. Child, first you design child component. That will be better. After that, parent component.ts. This is parent component.ts and parent component.html. HTML. So this is HTML. Okay. This is the complete example what I showed you. You try this, then we will have another example. One more example I will discuss and show you how to implement for real time. That we'll see in next session. Okay. And next session will be on Saturday. Tomorrow, no session. So again, we'll be on Saturday, right? Tomorrow, no session. Saturday, we'll have session. Okay. Right.